it's your turn to come up, and the council can come up in any order. Don't wait all the way back in your chair. Come on up and take a seat on the side so we can move things around quicker. Same thing with the other presenters, so we're not spending a lot of people's time at home. I know we have a big audience, just watching us move around. Thank you.
I only plan to talk for about 2 hours, so it shouldn't be too bad. Yeah, so obviously what we have on the screen for everybody to see, I have copies here for all of you. We also emailed somehow an email to all the residents. So Jason is emailing that version to the at-home viewers right now as well. Plus, I asked the concierge to have some copies available there if they want, if other people, forget about the home viewing audience, if anybody wants to come down and get one from them, if for some reason they can't access the email version. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, because it's facing up, so. Get my drink. I will. Yep, give me 1 second to wet my whistle. Thanks, Joan. So my name is Christy Battistoni. I'm the Director of Finance here at Woodland Pond. I've been here since 2009. Prior to opening, we worked in a cottage before we moved into the building. Okay. Well, 2020, what a year that was. I think we're all probably glad that it's behind us. Financially, it was a rough one. So right now we're going to go over the occupancy statistics for 2020. We always do a comparison. I feel like I'm going to just hold it. We always do a comparison between the present year of the audited statements and the year before. So if you want to look at the screen or your paper, surprisingly enough, we ended 2020 with 195 out of 201 units, which was pretty shocking because most of the year was very difficult as far as getting entrance fees and people to settle and want to move into a community. The year before, December 19, we ended with 200 units. So we have our work ahead of us. Let me just scroll down a little bit here. How does he do this? There we go. Okay. So at the end of 2020, though, as you can see, there was 13 available independent living units, which means that there were 6 units that were unoccupied in the house, but there were 7 units where someone in independent living had transferred over to the health center and their unit was not occupied. I know sometimes the statistics are a little funny, so I just want to make sure that people understand that. If a resident moves to the health center, they're still counted in our independent living occupancy number until someone else moves into their unit. So that's why it says 195 occupied units at the end of 2020. 7 units of that, though, were people that were in the health center. 195 out of 201, right. So that's why I'm saying there were 7 units of people that were at the health center waiting to be reoccupied, and then 6 other just vacant units. So, and then again, at the end of 2020, we did have 15 wait list deposits, and there were 316 total people living at Woodland Pond. And if you want to look at line 2, where it says 275, 195 independent living, and then 80 units were occupied in the health center out of 100. Yes, Pat? Yep.
You said that somebody from independent living moved into the health center. They're still counted as being there.
And
There's an exception, isn't there?
No, you're talking about the refund. They're attached. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Let's start again. In that 195, it's someone who's in the health center living. They're alive. So that has nothing to do with the 1 year, because as long as they're living, they're counted in that number. You're talking if somebody passed away. If somebody passed away, they wouldn't be in that number anymore. Well, there is rent for that unit coming in. If they're in that number, they're paying their monthly service fee, and it counts in our independent living revenue. Okay, I know it's a little hard to, right. I mean, the bottom line is, I guess the best way to look at it is that the person is considered attached to the independent living unit, even if they're in the health center, until someone else moves in there. Well, of course, unless they die, and they're not in any numbers. What? Any other questions on our occupancy?
Christie, can you give us a quick figure of what that line 4 is as of March 31st? Is that reduced?
No, it's increased. It's increased by a little bit. Yeah, I'm actually just working on the March financials right now, but yeah. And another thing to point out about our occupancy right here, if you can see the available units listed right there, 10 are Willows. And the larger units are all zeros. So we're struggling because everybody that wants to come in wants a larger unit. Nobody wants the smaller units. So a spruce is 1 bedroom, and then a willow is 1 bedroom and a den. And then a cedar is similar to the willow, but more square footage. Well, it's really, is it, I consider 2 bed, I was thinking it was 1 bedroom and den. Well, some people use a 1 bedroom and a den, 2 bedroom, but the square footage is, okay, there's a bedroom, sorry. Right. 1 bedroom and a den, 2 bedroom, dogwood is 2 bedrooms, bigger, more square footage. Oak is 2 bedroom and a den. And then cottage. So again, we have those wait list deposits that are listed here on number 5 are primarily because the people are waiting for a larger unit and we don't have them available at the time. So Michelle sends out notices periodically to see if people ever want to downsize. Nobody. A few people came and looked, but as far as I know, nobody's really seriously thinking about doing it. I know some family members are hoping that their person would like to downsize, but yeah, I mean, Shannon hasn't really said that anybody's seriously taking her up on that. Any other questions on our census? Okay. All right, so we're going to jump over to our P&L, our income statement as of 2020. Hold on. Hold on. Come on, Jason. I know he showed me how to do this. Okay. Okay, so surprisingly enough, our resident revenue really didn't change, only dropped by 2% from the end of 19 to the end of 20, because we certainly, in our health center and skilled nursing, with not being able to admit residents in 2020 for quite some period of time, had a drop in revenue. So it's not that bad of a change considering the year that it was. And the line 2 is non-cash base. It's resident revenue. It's the revenue that we bring on to our books over your life expectancies. With your entrance fees, people that have a 90% contract, that 10% we actually bring onto our books as income over your life expectancy. So it has no cash effect, but it is recognized revenue. And number 3 are just other income, really not much of a change since 2020. I do want to talk about line 3A because that was a lifesaver. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of stimulus funding that we were able to take advantage of, and we were able to get $545,000 of various stimulus funding through various means, infection control and whatnot. So I will have to they were supposed to have the portal open in January where I would have to submit a lot of documentation to justify our use of those funds, and so that people knew that it was all used for COVID purposes. So I'm still waiting for that portal to open, but it has yet to. We also, I applied for what's called a PPP loan, which was a payroll protection loan, and I got almost $1.7 million. And that money was given to facilities. You could apply for that, and if you didn't lay off your staff, and if you did certain qualifiers, you could have that loan forgiven. So I was able to submit the documentation in November, and that loan was forgiven in December. So we were able to keep that whole $1.67 million. So that was a huge boost to Woodland Pond in 2020. And just to take a step forward, they have PPP loans that were available in 2021. So I applied for one in January, and we got that. That was another almost $1.7 million, very similar amount of money. We got that in January. I just submitted all the documentation to get that loan forgiven. So I'm in the waiting stage right now. So fingers crossed that will all go well. Anybody have any questions on the revenue side? Pretty straightforward. Dropping down to our expenses, wages, benefits, 4% increase difference from 2020 to 2019. Our contract-based professional fees, our auditors, lawyers, et cetera, professional fees. Our expenses really stayed pretty close to 2019, given the situation. Supplies and other, that's basically everything. It's utilities, it's lawn maintenance, insurance, repairs, computer, every other expense at Woodland Pond is actually in that supplies and other line. And those expenses we held pretty close to 2019. The non-cash expenses are depreciation and amortization, so it has no effect with cash. And then our interest expense, that's our one largest expense. We pay interest twice a year in March and in September to our bondholders. A lot of activity in 2019, but really the only thing, we had some investment income in 2020, the $37,000, and then the change in the future services obligation that went down. You'll see that on the balance sheet on the next page. Our future services obligation was $13,800,000 in 19 and dropped to $12 million. Basically what that is, because that's it's always been people have questions about that. About 7 years ago, they came out with an accounting standard that said that you had to put a liability on your books, and it's determined by an actuarial firm, and it takes into account all our demographic information, your life expectancies, et cetera, to come up with a present value of what it would cost to provide future services. So that's just a liability. You'll see it on the next page of what it is. Right now, it's at 12 million, but it dropped from the year before. 5 years ago, it was on the books at 29 million. It's now at 12. So we're going in the right direction with that. Any questions on the income statement before we move to the balance sheet? Yes, Halima.
I had a question on personnel costs, that increase of 4%. Was that an increase in wages or an increase in staff?
Well, it probably, let's say, it's all of those things because it's also our benefit costs that would have gone up as well. Anything else on that? All right. Another thing I want to point out too is that, because you'll notice here, our cash, we had a $1 million drop in cash this year from 2019. I mean, obviously we got $2 million in stimulus money, which was fantastic. But the other thing is we had 15 settlements, so 15 people, 15 entrance fees in 2020, where we had 25 and 26 in the 2 years before. So it was a real decline. So we're really marketing is really ramped up to try to increase that number this year. We've had 2 in March. We're going to have 2 in April. And hopefully we'll be continuing that trend for 2021. All right, so our cash dropped $1 million between 2019, 2020. Like I said, the stimulus money certainly helped with that, but the hurting with the entrance fees was rough. Our property and equipment, that's a typical drop because of our depreciation is offset against that. We bought $453,000 of new capital equipment, et cetera, offset by depreciation. So our total assets at the end of 2020 were 76 million compared to the 80 million the year before. If you drop down to our debt, we had a drop in our debt. We paid Health Alliance their payment of $400,000 that we owed them in 2020. We have 4 years of payments left, which will be a total of we owe them $600,000 and we'll be paying that off for the next 4 years. So the largest payments that we had to pay to Health Alliance are done. So that's good. And then we paid, like I said, the $875,000 of principal. So our debt has decreased by $1.2 million from 19 to 20. Line 6 is our refundable contracts, deferred revenue. That's a liability for the refunds that we would owe people on their contracts. That's decreased because we did sell a lot of traditional contracts, which are the 0 refundable contracts in 2020, as well as the 50% refundable contracts. Many of you probably have 90% contracts. We still have those this year, but this will be the last year most likely for that. We're going to drop to a 75. So it'll be a 75, a 50, and a 0 refundable. So if you know anybody that wants to come in, now's the time. Number 7 is our accounts payable and our interest payable. And there's number 9 is the future services obligation, where I said it had been 13.8 million in the end of 19, dropped to 12.2 this year. So that was a help for us. Any questions on the balance sheet or the liabilities? All right. Okay, this is a breakdown of our cash. All these funds here are our trustee held funds. They're held with UMB Bank. That's our trustee bank. Up here, this is our cash, our operating accounts. These are the deposits we have, the waitlist deposits right now, 150,000, and well, the end of 2020, I should say. So 150,000, we had $10,000 waitlist deposits. Right, where's my little pointer? Line 12, deposits in escrow. Okay. I do want to point out our operating reserve fund, if you notice in so this is line 10, was $272,000 at the end of 2019, and it jumped up to $691,000. Bob, you keep an eye on our trustee held fund accounts all the time. I'm surprised you didn't really ask me about this one, but I know Okay. So basically the reason for the jump in that is that there was a feasibility study prepared prior to our new bonds that were issued back in 2017. And the debt service reserve fund, that's line 7, that has the largest balance in it, it had to remain stable at a certain amount of money. And so we talked to the trustee and we were able to move the excess over the 4.7 that has to stay there. We were able to move that out into our operating reserve fund because we have access to these accounts if we should need the money. So it's better for us if it's in the operating reserve. So what we decided to do is yearly, we will true that up. As long as it stays at the $4.7 million, if it goes over that, we can just move it from that fund to the other fund. So, because I know certainly Bill Stevens and you like to see that operating reserve fund grow.
Oh, yeah, we'd like to see it. I know the last 3 months you haven't put any money in.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it's been we'll get to that again, I'm sure, but any questions on our balances and our accounts? One other thing that I wanted to mention as well is that we also secured a line of credit because we were concerned that if we ever had to pay a lot of refunds and we didn't have the cash to do so, we now have a line of credit of $1 million that we could draw from if necessary at Sawyer Savings Bank. So now M&T was always my operating account, but we are now using Sawyer Savings as our operating bank as well. So we have that line of credit. We don't plan to touch it, but it's there if necessary, if there's ever a big run on refunds, because sort of what Pat was alluding to before, but if you're in the health center and your unit has already been reoccupied in independent living and you pass away, I need to refund your family, your estate, your whatever within 30 days. So with that short period of time, we just needed to make sure that we had a line that we could draw from if necessary. Believe it or not, I've paid 11 refunds already this year and have 13 in the queue. So, yeah. Any other questions here on the cash and reserve funds? Okay, so I normally just do a listing of what we have spent on capital expenditures throughout the year. We didn't do any real discretionary spending in 2020 for obvious reasons, but these are the things that we spent money on. The biggest thing is we're 12 years old now, so every time apartment comes up, it requires quite a bit. It used to be just carpet and paint, but now it's some kitchens need to be redone, the countertops need to be redone, so the turnover costs on the apartments are getting more expensive, and appliances wear out, that type of thing. So as you can see, we spent a lot of money on apartment turnovers this past year. Bought a new van. I mean, those are the lists. Anybody have any questions on, if you'll notice on the line 9, the health center lobby renovations, we were all set to redo our health center lobby. And then Tom found out that the guidance was changed with New York State, and you used to have to just get safety plans if you did any kind of changes in rooms, but not like in common spaces. But he found out that you needed to do them, you needed to get, have a safety plan in place, submitted and approved in order to do any changes. So he's been calling and calling and calling and still hasn't heard anything or gotten an approval yet. So we have a lot of we have the wallpaper, we have the plan, we have what's necessary for the lobby renovations to take place, but we just haven't been able to start them yet. Does anybody have any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. SNF is skilled nursing facility. So there were new beds in all the skilled rooms. Anybody have any questions on just things in general? You know, Dave?
You have in the past indicated that we are healthy when we have X number of days of operating cash. I don't know what the X is, but are we still healthy in that regard?
So bottom line is our model was set up where our revenue does not cover our expenses. I mean, that's how it is. It's the entrance fees that we need as well. And that still is status quo at this point. I'm trying to think. I just finished my March financials. Right. So obviously, right, our days of cash on hand, we met our covenant. Yes, and that's another thing. We met all our covenants at the end of 2020. We do a debt service reserve fund calculation and a days cash on hand, and we met our covenants then. We will not, I'm sorry, let me clarify that. We met them in June. We did not meet our debt service reserve fund covenant at the end of December. Days cash on hand, that was fine. So that we're getting a waiver for. The bondholders give us a waiver for that. And whether we may or may not, more than likely may not meet that at the end of 21, and we'll need to get a waiver for that as well. Anything else? Anything about 2021? If you know people that are interested in moving in, we offer to get on waiting lists to be higher on the list for a cottage or an oak. If people settle and come into a smaller unit, that puts them higher on the waiting list. So, I mean, those are incentives that we try to get in order for people to move in and take ownership of a smaller unit. I mean, I'm sure people remember when we couldn't sell the cottages way back when. Now we have just the opposite problem. It's very funny how that has turned around. Any other questions? Okay, well, for the home viewers, again, you would have received an email with this paperwork, and if not, you can pick it up from the concierge, or you can email me and I can get it to you. Feel free, if you have any questions, always to email me, or I guess email. We're not really supposed to have people in and out of the office as much anymore, or call me on the phone. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I guess that's it. Thanks.
Wow.
Oh, it's back. Okay, I don't want to break it.
Okay. Well, hopefully we're past all that. Huh? So while she's packing up, let me just say that this particular residence council has tried to make it its business or its focus to increase awareness around the campus, increase awareness and increase participation in all of the campus-based activities and interest groups. You know, we have Council Corner and Council Connections and various other means of communication. We're trying to be out promoting everything. So I'd like to take a minute right now to have the council members come up in whatever order and introduce themselves and say which committees they work with, which interest groups they're part of. I'll start. I do attend brain teasers regularly.
My favorite pen.
And my dirty old hat. I do attend brain teasers regularly when it's not golf season. I am on the Land Conservation Committee, service secretary at the moment. I like to play hearts when the hearts room is open. And I'm on the residence council. Who'd like to be next and talk about themselves? We are missing a couple people today. We're missing George Brown. Question? Oh, I'm sorry. Dave Smith. Sorry. You walk by my house and you see my dogs. That's me. Oh, that's my dogs anyway. So Yakov Pittman and George Brown are not here. Yakov and George are very involved in the sustainability committee and probably 100 other things around campus. George is our liaison. Yakov's done a lot of technical work for our committee, and I'm underselling them, guys. I know they do more than that, but that's, I just pass this around. Can we do it that way? Would that be faster?
Okay, I'm Carl Rodman. I am the liaison for two committees, the Physical Plant Committee and the Landscape Committee. And my message to residents out there is when something is wrong, don't complain about it. Go to the desk and put in a work order and something will probably get done. There are a lot of jobs around the place. As you walk through the halls and you see something not right, get in those work orders. Thanks.
I'm not sure if we're being filmed right now.
Well, I can't come up if I'm not on film. My goodness. I'm Alice Cross. Oh, thank you. Most people know because I'm on the Welcome Committee, so I get to meet all the new people and keep up with the old ones. We just try to make the move in, which is a very difficult process, as we all know, as smooth as possible. And also I've worked with the Library Committee. Hopefully you heard that program by them yesterday. And we hope to have many new people enjoying the library. That's the library and the swimming pool tend to sell Woodland Pond.
Hi, I'm Joan Hollister, and I don't want to be associated with the F word, but the committees that I'm the liaison for, the Finance Review Committee and the dining, food. So finance and food, anyway, that's what I'm interested in. And let's see, we have Ginny now.
Thank you. I'm Jenny Esser, and I'm the liaison with the Library Committee. And I think I have one of the best jobs here because I get to deal with what's going on in your fabulous library. And I only can pass on to you, support them, and get those books back. Those people want those books back. So do your best if you can.
I am Annette Johnson. Right now, I'm recording secretary for the Residence Council, and I'm a liaison to the Welcome Committee, which I've been on as long as they'd accept me. I had to wait a few months before I could get on the committee when I was new, and also to the Woodland Pond Benefit Fund. And another committee that we don't have a liaison for, it's a different kind of committee, and it has been inactive for over a year, the Activities Committee. And in the old days, we used to have activities. So those of you who are newer, I hope that you learn about activities.
And one other person I overlooked is Shalom. Shalom Schwartz is serving temporarily to fill a leave of absence, and he is our corresponding secretary. And he's the one who actually drafted the letter that we sent out from the Residents Council. So if you'll want to thank somebody, thank him. We tuned it up, but only a little bit. He's a great writer. And I think that takes care of our little portion. So now I'd like to have the representatives from the interest groups come up. And our first one is going to be Halima Hassan, and talking about the brain teasers. I sure can.
Whoops. Get it to stay on. Muscle. Good afternoon. I'm Halima Hassan, and I've been asked to speak about one of the activities I'm involved in, which is brain teasers. If you want to get together with friends and stretch your brain, exercise your brain muscles, and make a lot of money, brain teasers is the place for you. Just kidding about the money. It is probably the longest ongoing activity at Woodland Pond. It started in December of 2009, and our activities coordinator, Gretchen Daum, is the facilitator. She has a wealth of books and activities. Format is basically simple. She comes in and we do warm up, which really means frying your brain. And I'm going to give you an example of some of the books that she uses. And then the second half is paper work. A lot of it is words, word puzzles, anagrams, rhymes. And it's not competitive. We work together, and it's really a lot of fun. We don't cheat. Okay, let me just give you an example. This is one book that Gretchen uses. It's called 417 More Games, Puzzles, and Trivia to Keep Your Brain Young. And the puzzles are designed for different parts of the brain: executive functioning, working memory, processing speed, long-term memory, retention to detail. So I'll give you an example. This is called Signature Songs. And it's the first line of a song, and then we all jump in and try to tell the song. Stand by your man. I can't get no satisfaction. You don't have to scream out now. I'm just giving you examples. Don't feel threatened. People, everybody loves somebody sometime. Another activity which we like is called group therapy. And it's a game that proves, yes, and not that group therapy. It proves that there's more than one correct answer to a question. So these are some of the questions, and this is a pencil and paper exercise. Name 8 airline companies, past or present, and sometimes we're timed. Name 7 female first names that begin with the letter J. Name 12 words that end with the letters OP. And this is supposed to help long-term memory, executive functioning, and multitasking. I'll just give you a couple more. We like this one. It's called Finish the Proverb. Given the first couple of words of a familiar proverb or saying, you complete it. Every cloud. Whoa, we have brain teaser people. Absence makes all work and thank you. Strike. One man's trash. No good deed. Wow, you're all candidates, all qualified. If wishes were, beggars would ride. Okay. And just a couple of things. Another book that we use, you're probably familiar with the name Will Shortz. He's the New York Times puzzle editor for 30 years, and he is so gifted. I heard an interview with him once, and somebody said, how do you come up with these things? He said, I lie in bed and look at the ceiling. So that was his thing. One of the things we like are Tom Swifties. These were popular like in the 80s, you may remember. You fill in a blank with an adverb ending in the suffix ly to complete the sentence in a punny way. I'll make your Folgers coffee right away, said Tom. Instantly. Good, close. I've faced my troubles and I'll never see a psychiatrist again, said Tom unshrinkingly. Ooh, some of them, Gretchen calls them groaners, and some of them are really groaners. Let every lady now touch her partner, said Tom gently, graciously. I'll give everyone here $1,000, said Tom. Grantly, 1,000 grant, okay. So Brain Teasers meets 10 o'clock on Wednesdays in the PAC. You don't need a reservation and you don't have to come regularly, just drop in. I think you'll have a lot of fun. Thank you.
Next, we have Suzanne Orchowski, who is the head of the Dulcimers, but also the founder of the Dulcimers group. And last year, she ran this meeting.
Ran it all on 1340. We were not allowed to have people in here. Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah, I moved in and I had a Dulcimer with me when I moved in, actually more than one. And those of you who are new, having moved in the last year, may not be familiar with a Dulcimer. Those of you who have been here longer than me, by now, know what a Dulcimer is. This instrument actually was developed in the Appalachian Mountains about the beginning of the 1800s. There's no documentation, so we really don't have hard facts on it. But it came in the Scot-Irish settlements in the Appalachian Mountains. It's known as a mountain dulcimer, an Appalachian dulcimer, a fretted dulcimer, a lap dulcimer, and more. It also has several nicknames, one of which is a harmony box, and the one I love is a hog fiddle. Now, where that came from, I don't know. I have never seen a hog play one. But I think the Dulcimer stayed pretty much in the Appalachians until Jean Ritchie. Some of you may have heard her name. Many of you may not have. She was the 14th child of 14 kids in the Cumberland area of Kentucky. And they sang and they played dulcimers. That was their entertainment. And when she moved to New York City, she brought a dulcimer with her and started playing in coffee houses in New York City. And it started to catch on. Dulcimers are now in England and in France and other countries in Europe. They've not caught on in Australia yet, and across the country. So I personally got started when I took a sister's only vacation with my sister, and I went to Ripley, West Virginia, on a Rhodes Scholar trip. It was all different classes making different kinds of crafts, and we got in the group that made a dulcimer. Now, we did not plane the wood. We had a kit. We had an instructor who did a good deal of the work with us. So I can't say I really made it from scratch. I didn't, but I do know how they're constructed. It was very fascinating to see that. So I came home. I had a dulcimer. What are you going to do with it? I saw it as 3 opportunities. I could put it in the attic and forget I had it. I could hang it on the wall and say to my friends, see what I made. Or I could try to play it. And of course, I tried to play it and found out that actually I could. And it just got into my bloodstream. So it was a lonely trip at that point in time. I couldn't find any other dulcimer players, could not find a dulcimer teacher in the Hudson Valley. Finally went to a festival in Connecticut and met one other player who lived in Monroe, and we started getting together. She had been playing about a year and a half. I'd been playing about a year. And through other festivals and just by word of mouth, we started getting more people interested. And we ended up with a group called Hearts of the Valley for the Hudson Valley. And because of the heart-shaped sound holes, which are traditional in dulcimers, they're not the only thing out there, but they are traditional. We had a group of about 15 people. It's dwindled down this past year because we haven't been able to meet. But anyhow, when Gretch Dom heard that I belonged to a dulcimer group, she asked me if our dulcimer group would like to perform here. We did. We had never performed before. It was our first time. We sat over in that alcove over there, all set up, and people started coming in. We thought we might get maybe 50 people. They ended up putting up more chairs. We had over 75. They just kept coming in and coming in. So we put on our performance, and that spurred the interest in Woodland Pond. So I got a group started here, and it has taken off. We have currently 10 people, very dedicated people, because if you play an instrument, anybody who's played an instrument, you know you have to practice. You don't learn by osmosis. But we have, during the COVID pandemic, probably put on 6 or 7 different performances on 1340. For those of you who are new here, if you had heard us only on 1340, you really have not heard the instrument. The sound quality is terrible. We're going to be doing another performance at the end of May, the last Wednesday in May, I think it's the 26th. And we hope to have some people sitting live in the audience. You will be amazed at the difference in sound quality when you hear it live and on the Woodland Pond recording system. It's just is not made for music. It's made for voice. One more thing. Many dulcimer players, myself included, own more than one dulcimer. I personally have 6. One resides in Michigan with my daughter. So when I visit my daughter, there's a dulcimer waiting for me to play. 5 are here. 2 of them I regularly play. This is my favorite one. The other 3 are loners. If anyone out there thinks, gee, maybe I'd like to try it, but I don't want to buy a dulcimer and find out I don't like it. You don't have to. You borrow a dulcimer from me. I will get you started. It will cost you nothing to try, and we're always looking for new people. I love to get new people interested and hooked on this instrument. So I'm in the directory. Orkowski is the name. Give me a call, and I'll be in touch with you.
Thank you, Susan. That was good. Next, we have Joan from the Mahjong Society here. You want me to move the chair?
No, fine, thank you. But I will need my glasses, that's for sure. Hi, folks. I'm Joan Clinegris, and I moved in the second week that Woodland Pond opened up. So that was October 1st, 2009. It seems like I was always here. That's the kind of place it is. And Mahjong became one of my activities. And I did a little bit of research. To me, it's a really confusing and historic game. It was played by the ruling class and dates back to the time of Confucius.
And I'm sorry to say, only the wealthy men were allowed to play. Typical. Today, it is still the most popular game in the Orient. And it was introduced, I believe, to this country in 1920. And in 1937, National Mahjong League was founded. So all players were following the same rules, the same card, and all the hands on the card were the same, no matter where you were playing in the United States. So you could travel. Many people take cruises, go away on vacation, and play Mahjong all day. This Mahjong League donates all of its money to charitable organizations, and they produce a new card every year. And we pay for the card, and after expenses, they donate to whatever organization your group wants to use the money for. And the particular group that we use is the Hospice of Ulster County, because one of our favorite people succumbed to cancer, and she was a big player, so we send it in her name. In the fall of 2009, when we opened up, Anne Hanover offered Mahjong instruction classes here in the game room. I think she had 2 or 3 tables going at the same time. Anne's profession was a teacher, so she was wonderful in getting us oldies to play. The game caught on, and various groups started to gather together and joined into play. It's a game of tiles. It looks very confusing when you first look at it. If some of you play, you'll know. The thing that got me the most was, and Anne stressed it very importantly, it's a separate vocabulary. You must learn the vocabulary before you even learn the rules. And there are words like cracks, bams, dots, soaps, dragons, flowers, pung, kong, quince, etc. I could go on and on. And until you memorize what each one of those means, it's very difficult to play, because you pick up a tile and you look at it and it has a number 4 on it, but there's a symbol. You must say 4 crack when you throw it away. This card contains some of the rules that you'll come across, and it also contains the many hands. Just picture this being cards. They're tiles, and there are certain symbols. F is flower, D is dragon, and then there's numbers. There's things like quince, consecutive run, winds, which are northeast, west, south, dragons. It's singles and pairs. It's just a wonderful, wonderful game. And believe me, it looks confusing. We have people stop in when we're playing, and it sounds very complicated. But if I can manage to handle it, you can without any problem. We have, I believe, 3 or 4 existing groups going on at this time, meeting on different days in different places in the facility. Just check your calendar and they're all listed. And if you'd like to join, try to find a group that, or better yet, if you're a Mahjong player and you've just moved in, please start another group. We just need it desperately. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. She told me earlier that there is some cash that gets exchanged and parties happen at the end of the season or whatever. Next we have from the quilters, we have Bernice Leonard and Carol Natoli, who obviously are going to demonstrate or show off. Do you need the microphone, ladies?
Probably do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'll hold up
No, you're going to talk too. We brought some examples of projects. The things that the quilters do, of course, we all use, what? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Bernice Leonard.
Carol Natoli.
And we haven't met for a year, so we just do our own thing at this point. But we have had as many as 6, I think, in the group at one time. We meet on the Thursdays once a month. And more often we share projects and don't really sew when we're together. Some of the projects that this group has taken on over the years, masks. We have made clothing protectors, otherwise known as bibs, for the health center residents who requested it. There are tactile quilts, which I think, did we get, got lost under here. And I actually bought this from Carol because she made it. These, if you go visit eventually in the health center, you know, there are big posts in the great room, and on the posts, they have put up a whole lot of tactile quilts that we made as a project at one time. And you can...
Different sensations in different parts because there's different kinds of fabrics and different, so that they can feel different types of things.
You see quilts hanging in the hallways, and those are made by various members of the quilt group and others. We have also had quilt shows, and the most recent one was in 2019. We didn't do them every year. I think we were aiming for every other year, but I don't really know how that worked out, and we didn't have them at first. And one event we did was a bus trip to Pine Bush, where there's a really great fabric store. And we had a good time there. I want you to know that in the art studio, anybody who wants to sew anything, there are all kinds of fabric that people have donated in there for your use. And just take them, use it for whatever you want to use it for. And, you know, we all get too much fabric in our apartments and not enough storage space. So we decide how to thin it out and bring it down here. And I've brought some things down here that I come back and use. But anyway, so that's pretty much what we do. I have a little story about this quilt. And I recommend to anybody who makes a quilt to put a little pocket on the back with information about it, when it was made, who made it. You know, quilts become historic pieces sometimes. And I hope this is that true with this one. Yeah, that'd be fine. This quilt, we found the stars in the art studio along the wall. As you walk in the door, on the left is a wall of fabrics. That's where you're welcome to take things that you can use. I walked in there one day and there was a pile of these stars, and I had no idea. No indication. Some of the stars are signed and have very small in pencil or pen written who made the star. So I made the assumption it was a quilt group that had this project and did the same thing. But not one of those names was identifiable to any person who was at Woodland Pond. So it was a really huge mystery. I wrote a little story to put in the pocket on the back, so I'm going to just read it to you. A set of star quilts star squares were left in the Woodland Pond Art Studio about 2018 by someone unknown to Woodland Pond quilters. There are 20 stars in all. 18 of them are labeled with names of women who completed them. None of them were residents of Woodland Pond. 5 of the, 5 of the makers indicated the completion of the blocks during the period of October to November 1996. That was the first clue. Quilters at Woodland Pond admired the work done in making the stars and decided to use them to make a quilt for the craft show, marking the 10th anniversary of the opening of Woodland Pond in the fall of 2019. It was good to have a deadline. The piecing work, fabrics for sashing, borders, backing, and you know that between the front and the back, there's what we call batting, which is usually made of cotton fabric. We should have brought a piece of batting here to show them. But anyway, so it's 3 layers basically. So we put it together. The piecing work, the fabrics for sashing, which is the part that goes between the stars. That was the sashing. The borders and the backing and the batting and the machine quilting are all donated supplies and labor. So we hope that this quilt is an inspiration to people around here. And it has hung in the hallway. And I guess we'll go back up in the hallway. Yeah.
We also have another one that hung in the hallway that hangs. We took it down today to show it. This was across from the art room, and it was made by quilters in the first quilt group. And this was before I came in, but they did a nice job.
If anyone has tried to do piece a quilt, generally the rule is you add an extra 1/4 inch all the way around. So you have 1/4 inch seams to put it together. So people in the original quilt group made a square. So we were all working on it, and I don't quite remember how many, but it was a relatively simple pattern. And when we got done, I said I would put it all together. Well, that was a real challenge because those 1/4 inch seams just didn't quite work out the way I thought they would. And if anybody has ever tried to do a quilt project, a group project, that's bound to happen. I didn't know that, but I learned it. So that's what we have to show. Also, if you have a quilt to hang, we put a sleeve on the top, on the back, so you could slide a dowel or a curtain rod or whatever it is through there and hang it, which is what we've done. Any questions? Who wants to come quilt? All right, thank you very much for your attention. I know it's been kind of a long afternoon.
Okay, Trina, our next interest group is a short story group 1. There is more than one, but Trina is listed as the contact person for short story group 1. Yes, you do.
They're beautiful. Okay, well, I'm Trina Green, and what did you say? Oh, I forgot. Okay, I'm Trina Green, and I'm one of 3 people who lead the short story groups. There are 2 short story groups, and that's because we grew so big in the first one, we split and started a second one. So the first group meets on Tuesdays. They all meet on Tuesdays, the first and the third Tuesdays in the month, and they go from 4 to 5.
And Rob and I, my husband and I, lead this group. The second group is led by Maddie Lee, also on Tuesdays. And that is the second and the fourth Tuesdays. You are welcome to join both groups if you'd like to. And we have 2 folders at the concierge. And if you want to sign up in either group, go to the concierge and see if there are places. Maddie tells me there are possibly 3 places at the moment, and I think we may have 1 or 2. So anyway, how did this get started? Well, I've always loved the idea of not getting my news off of television, but in a country inn. I picture myself coming into the inn in the autumn, and my boots are muddy, and I sit in front of a crackling fire, and there are several other people there, and we tell stories about what's going on in Philadelphia with the revolution. Guess what? The British burned Kingston. It all sounded, when somebody tells something, it's very, very interesting. And the short story is very much like that. You have a small space in which to write a story. So actually, the difference between a novel and a short story is space. Our short stories vary from, it used to be 4 pages when we started, but now they're possibly up to 22 at the most. You get your short story from the concierge, printed up and enlarged, and you pick it up about 4 or 5 days before the class. And everybody gets a copy, and I did say they were enlarged. So we encourage people to read the story at least 2, maybe 3 times, to underline, you have your little symbols for humor or language or metaphor, or I'm not sure the difference between a metaphor and a simile, but anyway, I know what a metaphor is. So that you can discuss the particular story. We are now, Rob and I at least, and I think possibly Maddie too, are writing the questions, or several questions that we would love people to consider on a separate sheet of paper, which is stapled to the story. So, it might be, why did so-and-so cease speaking to so-and-so? Or why did this person make the choice that he or she did? Just to get your mind going. When we started the short story groups, people just kind of didn't know how to approach a short story. And I was very scared, or had stage fright as a teacher, although I majored in English at college. But gradually it's become such a pleasure as people learn to look at a short story from many angles. And now the group that we lead are very confident in talking about what they liked, why they liked it, what they have questions about, or discussing language. And we encourage people to read aloud passages of the short story that they've liked. Now let me see if also we pick stories from a variety of ethical backgrounds, Jewish stories, Italian stories, Spanish, and recently a Native American. There's a woman who's written exquisite stories. The book is called, I think, Grass Dancer. If you're interested in somebody's take on the Sioux, S-I-O-U-X, civilization, go get a secondhand copy online. They are beautiful. So I think we've done it. But I wanted to say one more thing. A story lives inside of you sometimes. Once you've read certain stories, they just kind of go inside you and they become part of your inner world. There's certain stories I remember, I lived them. This will happen to everybody. And we do have people who say, I've lived that experience. Although we don't encourage much description of one's personal life, because that can take away from an hour. And there are about 10 people who attend regularly, maybe up to 12 or 13, all of us. So come to the short story group and be enriched. And you can walk those stories in your mind when you go to bed at night forever. Thank you.
Trina, thank you. So that concludes the highlight portion of the show. But as I said, and by the way, I want to say I'm thrilled to see so many faces in the room. When I went to the concierge or checked in with the concierge on Monday, or maybe even Tuesday, to find out how many people had signed up, they said there was 5. And it includes 2 of the people who are up here speaking. But I'm so glad that so many of you decided to come here this afternoon. So now I'm going to ask Alice Cross to come up and speak a little bit about well, it comes under section 1.4 of the bylaws. It says, the purpose of the association shall be, and it names several, and one of them is to ensure the residents' ideas, suggestions, and concerns are brought to the attention of management and the board. And so, as I said earlier, the issue of mandating vaccines, or the whole vaccine issue, is one that's been well discussed by others, but Alice is going to take you through the arc of our participation in that, if you will.
I know people are not wanting to think about something else, but this happens to be, you can't put it off and study it later. As Dave said, I'm Alice Cross. As Dave said, the bylaws say a purpose is to promote cooperation and communication between the residents of Woodland Pond, the board of directors, the executive director, and staff. Michelle had encouraged, she talks to the residents council every other meeting, and just whatever is the current issue. And she had said that she would love to have more representation on the at the board meetings. We always give a report, but it's not been much of a conversation. And so she was, with this very important issue in front of all of us, she had encouraged that there be more input from the Residents Council on the part of the residents. So we were invited to join the Zoom meeting that the board of directors had last Thursday. And the focus of the meeting was whether to require vaccination of all staff and all residents and all management, of course. The president of the board, this was all by Zoom, so I wished we could be together, but she mentioned the letter that the Residents Council had just written to staff and management, thanking them for their year of incredibly intense efforts to keep us safe within Woodland Pond with a very difficult, unprecedented situation. Then Michelle set the meeting. I was surprised she ran the meeting. Yeah, from her car. Okay, unbelievable. She was going to her son's ice hockey state level playoff in, I think, Rochester. So she had her phone in front of so we could see her face. She had a computer over here somewhere that she kept referring to. So she opened the meeting and gave, and if you've listened to her much on her noontime reports and so on, she is so deeply involved, knowledgeable, thoughtful, along with her staff, of course. So she introduced the situation, gave some more information that we have heard. And of course, that everyone should be required to be vaccinated everyone says before they think about it, of course. It's a no-brainer. However, it turns out that that is an inadequate conclusion. So Philip Mell, the director of the health center, presented his considerations from his point of view with his staff, the issues that are there specifically in the health center. Then Dave and I were introduced to discuss the aspects of the issue from the point of view of the residents. And the last point that we made was that we want more communication and contact between the board of directors and the residents. Because in the beginning of Woodland Pond, we did have personal contact. It was a different setup because the real board was the Kingston Hospital Board. We didn't have contact with them. There was a board under that we did have contact with. And how can you make decisions how to govern somebody that you don't know? So we feel, we're not a bunch of limp characters sitting around twiddling our thumbs. This is a very obviously vital, interesting, impressive group of people. And we think the directors would enjoy getting to know us. So we said that we hope very much that this can be developed further. Apparently it was done better a few years ago, but so it was the interesting discussion on vaccination, but we also hope this secondary thought was going to come to fruition. And of course, the outcome from the board is the letter that Michelle read to us yesterday and that we all have in our cubbies. So that was the decision of the board on the basis of what Michelle has said, Phil has said, Dave and I said, and that is the current status, that it will not be mandated and that education will continue to encourage people who have not been vaccinated for lots of complicated reasons. So Phil says more and more slowly are agreeing to feel comfortable with the vaccination, but at any rate, it is not required at this time. Now, you're very ready to go and have a cup of tea or a nap, so I'm finished, David.
Well done, Alice. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on what we've covered? These meetings are, we do another one in the fall as required. We may have one in the summer. We want to continue to highlight some of the activities and some of the experiences that people are having around here. We especially want to make sure that new people who haven't been fully introduced to all the opportunities around here get as much exposure to those activities and opportunities that we have. Appreciate those of you who showed us your skills and talents today, that you make room for others in your groups. I don't have anything else. If anybody does, raise a hand. Again, I'm happy to see so many of you all here. And it's almost time for dinner. Oh, yes, ma'am.
But if it's
No disagreement on my part that we are restricted and we'd like to be more, might be able to do all the things we did a year and change ago. We have said that to the board. We have said that to Michelle. I think as a board, or excuse me, as a council, we've taken the issue as far as we can. I appreciate what you're saying. And even the language that the board uses recognizes that we want to get back to some of the activities that we had. I don't, is there a specific action you'd like us to consider or to take? I understand your point of view and I agree with you, but mm-hmm. Right. My own sense is that everybody's somewhere on that scale of I want to do more, I want to do more, and I want to do it now. I don't think anybody's happy with the way things are, that this isn't the lifestyle that they planned on when they moved in here. No, I'm no disagreement. Alice, you want to just say something?
I've learned through study and talking that there are a number of reasons why people choose not to be vaccinated. And I'd be happy to talk to anybody. I think, and you can also talk to Michelle.
That's not the point. I know there are reasons why people choose not to be vaccinated, but they choose. We do not have the choice.
I think she's going to open up more, but the fact is that nobody around here requires vaccination. And we are short-staffed as it is. And we can't survive without the staff we have. And we are not going to do something that forces them to leave. There are lots of considerations that I didn't know about as to why I said it's a knee jerk that everybody should get it, especially in a healthcare setting. But there are hospitals, so on, so on. You would just assume that everybody would be required to be vaccinated, and it's not the case. There are just so many issues. I too agree that we need, and I think she's going to loosen up, and it helps to tell her so, that you think. Jude?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I understand exactly why some people can't get vaccinated, but I want to know who is not vaccinated, because I can make a personal choice whether I'm in the same room with them for a meeting or something. I find it very disquieting that there are unknown people around here, residents also, who have chosen not to be vaccinated, and that's their right, absolutely, but I don't want to be near them.
Well, I don't know how you're going to find out, because I don't think, Michelle said to ask, before you have something to do with anybody, ask. But the original question, I'd be happy to talk to you, have a conversation, because there are a lot of, I used to think what you think. I mean, it's just who wouldn't get, but it's obviously that it won't. And she says, Michelle's position is that we are safe if we've been vaccinated, and you're never going to be totally safe. So, this is in life, we're never totally safe. So I think we need to not be here the rest of our lives, but it's what you say, in my view, is perfectly acceptable. You might ask the reasoning behind the more freedom at other similar locations. What is the reasoning given there for it being okay?
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I find the restrictions that we've had or been put under, where we've been told that we can't move, we can't leave our apartments, we can't do this, we can't do that. I find well, if you live alone, they're very, very destroying and destructive of your personality. You become less than a person. I think it's just ridiculous, the amount of aloneness that we've been forced to undergo. And I don't think that Michelle has any concept of just how difficult it is when you live alone to survive as a human being under these conditions. I mean, she goes home to her family, to her children, to her husband, and I don't think she has any concept of this. And while this is, I realize she's done a wonderful job of keeping COVID out of here, I think it's gone far too far, and I think it's just incredibly difficult to live here.
Of course, we don't have any of those restrictions left. So we all agree it was very difficult. Well, you're free to go anywhere now. Well, if you organize, it's hard to organize to go to the dining room, but you can do it.
No, they went up here. Did you have your hand up? Oh, my mistake. Thank you. Going once, going twice? Okay. Thank you, financial people, for understanding everything that Christy presented. I have a degree. I have a 2-year degree in accounting, and that must have been taught the 3rd year because I didn't get all that.